Whenever ChatGPT first came out, I remember I was 17 at the time and I was actually still in school. One of my friends mentioned it to me. They were like, here Finley, listen, you gotta try this new app. It's really great. It's called ChatGPT and it's AI. And now at that point, the word AI didn't really mean anything to me. I mean, I'd never thought about it. All I assumed it was just futuristic and that it didn't really affect me in any way. But after first trying ChatGPT that day while I was in school, I mean, you probably already know what I was thinking. We were all thinking the exact same thing. Everyone who first tried it, that this is insane. It was explaining things better than my teachers, you know, I genuinely couldn't believe it. And I gotta give a lot of credit to that moment, which really sparked a lot of fascination that I still have with AI. And I've used ChatGPT every single day since then, without fail. And in that time, I've learned it inside out. And I've also built a company around it, an AI agency that helps other businesses integrate AI to save time and also make money. But it really traces back to that first moment when I first tried ChatGPT. But listen, I know you don't want my life story. You want to know how you can use this tool at the highest possible level. So in this video, I'm going to show you 10 of the best, most efficient ways that you can use ChatGPT. You know, the kind of things that'll make you feel like you're breaking the rules, because the reality is most people don't even have their ChatGPT settings configured correctly. My promise to you is that by the end of this video, you will leave a much better ChatGPT user. So let's crack on. So number one is setting up your ChatGPT settings, and more specifically ChatGPT personalization. You know, I've read a lot of people on LinkedIn say that ChatGPT personalization doesn't really matter, and it's all about your in-chat prompting and how you lay out your prompts, trying to give away free prompts. But the reality is, if OpenAI add this stuff as a setting in ChatGPT, there's a reason that they've added it in. It's to make your life easier and your experience with ChatGPT better. So let me show you how you can set this up perfectly. So whenever you're inside ChatGPT, you want to press on your name in the bottom left corner and then click on personalization. And obviously you want to enable customization. And if you don't have this on, we've got a lot of work to do. So make sure that's switched on and then we can move on to the different features. So the first one is ChatGPT personality. Now, as it says on screen, this sets the style and tone of ChatGPT. Now, I've tried all of them. By far the best two are the default one and the nerd. You know, if you're somebody who asks a lot of questions or you have a very skillful and complex job, then maybe you would want to use the nerd for obviously explaining things, but default is all around the best. I mean, they would optimize the default because most people are going to be using ChatGPT in that way. You can think about it this way, most people are using ChatGPT on the default setting, so OpenAI is going to put the most time and money into optimizing this setting, so I would just keep it in default. So the next setting is custom instructions. Now, I've actually made a prompt for this that pretty much covers every use case of ChatGPT. I'll put it up on screen so you can have a quick scan through it, but I will also be putting this in our AI Learning Center, and you can get access to that completely for free in the description. The link will be down there. This prompt basically makes ChatGPT's outputs a lot better. You know, it will remember you, it will call its own shots on when to research or when to think deeper. It will keep answers airtight unless complexity demands more, and straight up admits whenever it doesn't know something instead of just making things up. Of course, you can go in and make any sort of changes you want to, but for the most part, that will suffice. It's the one I use and I've got zero complaints whatsoever. So for the About You section, the first two is very simple. Just put your name and your occupation. I don't really need to further explain that. And for the More About You section, it's the same about the instructions. I have made a prompt that I would strongly recommend you copy and paste and add into your own ChatGPT. It gives a really good summary and overview about exactly who you are, and it gives perfect context to ChatGPT. I'll put it up on screen so you can have a quick scan through, but for the most part, it's looking at your professional identity, you know, your core skills, goals, and the ways and styles that you communicate. Once you get this, just fire it in there and then we should be good to go. Now, for the rest of the stuff, you can pretty much leave except memory, which we will be coming back to later in this video. But anyway, let's move on. Okay, so number two is ChatGPT projects. Okay, I want you to be completely honest with me. Is your ChatGPT just cluttered with a mess of random conversations from 2 or 3 years ago? You know, have you got a bad habit of just asking one question whenever it springs into your mind and then not even deleting it and just keeping it there? Now your ChatGPT is just like a graveyard of chats that haven't been finished. And you can prevent all this by using projects and keeping your ChatGPT organized. I mean, not to brag, but my ChatGPT has no loose conversations. Everything is within projects. I don't talk to ChatGPT unless it's in a project. Projects basically give you a dedicated workspace inside of ChatGPT. So instead of these one-off chats, you've actually got a hub where you can upload files, add instructions, and keep every conversation on one topic in one place. They live just above the chat section in the main interface, and here's the best practice for creating a solid project for any use case. Okay, so important first note, 99 times out of 100, I would always keep the first setting on default. You don't need to go into as much depth here as we did in the personalized instructions that we just covered. You know, 9 times out of 10, I find that this also works best when you just have 5 or 6 concise bullet points of exactly what you're trying to do. Now, here's an example example of one of my personal projects, which is YouTube scripts, you know, clear and concise and not a huge prompt. We already made our prompt in the personalization section. And the best part of projects is that you can upload files, which gives it even more contextual knowledge. So for example, in my YouTube scripting project, I've uploaded a couple of my old YouTube scripts. So whenever I'm working on a new one, ChatGPT can just reference them and keep the tone and style consistent. So I urge you to use projects as much as possible. For example, I have one for individual clients. I also have one if I ever just have an idea or a question in my mind about anything that I need answered. I have a certain project for that. And I know it's kind of annoying, especially if you're using it on mobile, because whenever you open ChatGPT on mobile, it just takes you to a brand new chat. But for the sake of 3 seconds to keep everything organized, I think it's worth it. I mean, I personally do that. And also you'll just get a better answer. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer for me. So you can think of them as like mini command centers for every area of your life. You're compartmentalizing ChatGPT into areas that are specifically good at one specific task. Super easy to set up, keeps your ChatGPT organized, and your outputs are much better. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And they're also incredibly important for number 3, which we're moving on to now. And number 3 is ChatGPT canvases. If you've ever used ChatGPT to write something long, which you probably have, like a report, some sort of code, or an essay, then this process is pretty brutal without canvases. This is probably what you're doing. You'll give it a brief idea, you'll get ChatGPT to write it, you'll find a few things that you don't like, you'll ask it to fix these exact things, so it rewrites the whole thing, and then 5 minutes later, or about 20 requests later, the chat is just so overloaded and slow that it can barely work. So for the sake of fixing one sentence or one word, it's rewriting the whole thing. And this is where canvases come in and make life so much easier. They directly solve this problem. So instead of regenerating everything, ChatGPT works like an editor, focused on one block at a time. You just highlight in the side panel the part that you want changed, and it just fixes that entire section while leaving the rest untouched. Canvases are designed for working around large sort of projects or pieces of text, slowly picking away at them until they're perfect. Everything's focused on one block at a time. It also allows you to make much longer text and to a much higher quality. They're also super easy to set up as well. Just hit the little plus in the corner, and then more, and then fire away. Or you can go into a chat where you've had one of these classic back and forth conversations and just throw everything into a canvas. Like I said, you can highlight and ask things about specific words or sentences. You can preview code. You can download and copy text very easily. It has pre-made options when writing to adjust the reading level, the length, and the overall quality. And with code, you can port to a certain language, fix bugs, and also add logs and comments. And the bottom line is, without canvases, you're essentially wrestling ChatGPT. Okay, so we've now got our personalization settings configured correctly. We've also made a project, and we're using a canvas within that project. Think of how much better our outputs are going to be. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. So number 4 is called Immersion Prompting, and this is where you'll notice ChatGPT becoming much less generic, you know, hyper-targeted on exactly what it is that you need. So here's how it works. Instead of just tossing in a few guiding notes, drop in a complete identity and scenario framework. You know, things like backstory, voice, style, environment, even weird quirks. I'll show you an example. This is my billionaire mentor template. And when I load this up, every response is miles ahead. It's so much better than if I didn't have this prompt in. And the secret here is by giving it a scenario in so much detail. You know, you give it this much structure, you're locking it in a mindset. And by immersing it into a scenario, it will add an extra layer of expertise in the responses. You know, everyone's familiar with giving ChatGPT a role, but not everyone's familiar actually putting it in a scenario. You know, there's role prompting and then also scenario prompting. So that's why whenever I combine them, I call it immersion prompting. Right, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're studying for an exam tomorrow. Don't just say you're a professor, teach me this subject. Take it one step further. Say that I've just paid you 50 grand for a 1-hour session and your entire reputation is on the line if I fail this test. Trust me, the answers will be a lot better. It's also really easy to set up, and from my experience, these work best in projects. You can even use a canvas to write your immersion prompt and then paste into the instructions of a prompt. And from then on, everything inside that project will be like you're having a conversation with this expert. All outputs will be ran through this identity automatically. And with this much detail from your immersion prompt, it will mostly override the personalization instructions that we said at the beginning. But keep in mind, this works best in a really specific use case. And that billionaire mentor template that I mentioned earlier on is also in our learning center, so you can access that for free with the link in the description. So this is why I call it immersion, because you're stepping into a scenario with ChatGPT. It's almost like role play in a weird way. And once you try it, you'll really see what I mean. The responses will be sharper, they'll be more consistent, and they'll just be more specific to the scenario that you set it in. I also mentioned this in one of my recent videos, which is the AI tools iceberg. It's Claude immersion prompting. They both work a little bit different, but I'll put that up in the top right corner if you want to check that video out. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. So number 5 is shopping. You can actually use ChatGPT to shop now. Now, at the time of recording this video, ChatGPT does not have the Shopify integration that it's been talking about, but I believe that feature is coming very soon. Anyway, this one more helps you pick the right product and compare different options. This is especially powerful if you're looking to make an expensive purchase. You know, usually you're gonna have like 15 tabs open, spec sheets, Amazon reviews, everything. It'll be a nightmare. But with ChatGPT, you you can just tell it exactly what you're looking for. And here's the important bit. Make sure you ask it to display the product cards. That way it'll pull up options right inside the chat with prices, stores, and side-by-side comparisons. And when you click on a card, you'll get even more detail. You know, why that product may be a good fit, things to watch out for, even breakdowns of certain specs. And it's way more than just a picture and a link. It's like having a mini product research agent built in. And the best part is you can ask it follow-ups about the products directly. You know, if you're looking for a laptop, you want to ask which one has the best battery life or which one's lighter for traveling. Just ask and it'll pull all those insights in seconds. So if it's some sort of gadget or furniture or any sort of expensive purchase, this is perfect for you. It'll turn ChatGPT into your personal shopper. Once you use this, it's really hard to go back. I mean, I actually used it recently to buy a laptop and it was incredibly helpful. Like pretty much everything with ChatGPT. Anyway, let's move on to number 6. Okay, number 6 is file generation. And yes, I'm sure most of you are already aware that ChatGPT can generate PDFs, but it can also generate pretty much any file type. I guarantee that you didn't know that ChatGPT can generate PowerPoints. You know, you can get Word docs, you can get spreadsheets, plain text, or markdown files if you want something simple. I'll give you a quick list here of everything that ChatGPT can generate. We've got PDFs with proper layout and also PowerPoints, docx files for essays or reports, text or RTF for simple notes, markdown files for dev work or docs. We've got Excel spreadsheets and CSVs for all types of data, as well as ODP if you're on open source tools, and even ODT, which is basically Word but in open standard format. And to get it to generate these files, there's no trick. You just literally ask ChatGPT and it'll do it. So instead of wasting hours making docs look professional, just ask ChatGPT and then boom, it's ready just like that. Okay, so that one was nice and short and snappy, but we're moving on to number 7, which I actually mentioned earlier in the video, which is memory. So this is where ChatGPT begins to remember you, and not just in one chat but across everything. You'll find it under the same personalization tab that we used earlier, and from here you can turn memory on, check what it remembers, and clear anything you don't want saved. You're definitely in one of two scenarios. 1, your ChatGPT memory is on like 99%, and 2, it's practically empty. If you want to update your memory, whenever you're in a chat with ChatGPT, just literally tell it, update your memory. This is important, keep note of that. You know, whenever you say something that you feel like could be helpful in the future, will provide more context to ChatGPT, ask it to save it to its memory, and then you'll see it in that glowing text, updating memory, and then it'll come back and it'll say, here, I have updated my memory. Now that setting that I just told you about, that's where you can go and delete it. So if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you've got far too much memory, then go in and clear some of the stuff out that you don't need. I remember whenever I first discovered this, I went into memory and it was just a load of junk clogging its memory. Cleared all the memory out, and then I went to a new chat and just started saying loads of things about me that I thought would be helpful in future conversations. Just told it to update its memory with everything. And a very important note is that whenever you're deleting chats, that doesn't also delete the memory. If you want to reset, you've got to go into manage memories, or you can just ask ChatGPT directly. If you're experimenting with something or you're not really having a serious chat, use a temporary chat. And also try to be consistent when asking ChatGPT to update its memory, or else it'll just do it itself and it won't be as accurate as whenever you tell it to. Also, I found it work best whenever you tell it to save like short snappy memories. Bullet points as well works well instead of just a big, chunk of text. So quick summary, you either want to add valuable memories to ChatGPT if you haven't already done so, if you've either made a new account or you've just never really asked it to, or you haven't used it much. Second of all, you've probably got far too many memories in there that are not really useful. See, to be fair, I'm saying that it'll probably do an okay job, but you can just do a much better job. Unclutter the bad ones and make room for some better memory, and then go and actually have a conversation that's all about memory. This is like where you connect your brain to ChatGPT and it begins to know everything about you. Whenever it's tidy, it's very powerful, but whenever it's chaotic, it isn't. And whenever your ChatGPT memory isn't tidy, it's just going to make your experience worse. It's going to think you're still in the same place or you're still working on the same project. It won't be able to keep up with you. So make sure you update it and stay on top of this. Now moving on to number 8, we have ChatGPT images. And this isn't random AI art. This is actually useful images that have text on them. Practical presentation ready visuals with, valuable text written on them that is actually readable. So the new image model in ChatGPT that replaced DALL-E earlier this year can actually render very clean, readable text directly on the images. This now means that you can ask it for things like a pitch deck slide with a bold title at the top. You can have a subtitle underneath that and then 3 simple icons across the bottom. And they aren't blurry letters anymore, they're fully readable. It's great. And most of it comes down to how you prompt it. You want to keep the text short and punchy. You want to be very specific about placement, like telling it I want a title centered at the top in bold sans serif font. The more you describe the layout, the cleaner the result. Some general tips are to use strong contrast, light text on a dark background or dark text on a light background. Also avoid long paragraphs. I mean, it can only generate so much text with good quality. Specify your aspect ratio. And one of the best use cases that I've seen is how you can tailor one image for multiple different purposes. One version is for your pitch deck. The next version of an image is just for LinkedIn, and another's resized for a one-pager, and it's all made super easy with ChatGPT Image. Don't just think of the new ChatGPT Image like how it was with DALL-E. These are ready-to-go visual assets with text baked into them. Anyway, number 9 is data analysis. And this is where GPT-5 is so good at this, and it easily surpasses Claude. Taking data and raw numbers and turning it into insights that you can actually use. Normally looking through a spreadsheet is pretty painful. You're scrolling, you're trying to find out what the numbers mean, but if you just upload that file here in ChatGPT, it will instantly explain it in plain English. If you upload financial data, it can tell you, okay, sales are going up in Europe, but they're dropping in the US, or customer churn doubled in Q3. It can easily see all this. And it's not just words, you can ask it to turn data into charts, bar charts, line charts, pie charts, whatever, so you can really see the trends. And if you want to get fancy, you can even ask it to generate an interactive graph inside an HTML file. That means you can open it up in a canvas and hover over the points to explore the data yourself. Try to always ask for visuals and always get specific with things. And the best part is you don't need to know any Excel formulas or Python codes for you to benefit. Literally just drop in the file and let ChatGPT do all the heavy lifting. You don't even need to go too crazy with prompting, just tell it to visualize this, help me understand this. Some basic things you can ask it is like, what's the main trend in this file? Show me the top 5 products by revenue. Display or MRR in a bar graph, and then show me predictions for the next 3 months. Things of this sort of nature. Before, it wasn't that good at that. Claude was way better, but GPT-5 takes it to a whole nother level. Okay, so now we've done data analysis, let's move on to number 10. So last but not least is tasks and reminders, which is a very new feature added into ChatGPT. This is where ChatGPT stops being reactive and actually works on your schedule. You will find it in the schedules tab, and here's how it works. Just ask something like, remind me every Friday at 4 p.m. to send the client report, or give me a daily AI news briefing at 6 p.m. and it'll just do it at whatever time you've asked it to. It'll send you a notification. And once you've created one in the schedules tab, it's very easy to edit. Pause it, delete it, or update it. Super simple. And it really is that easy to set up. For the most part, just ask ChatGPT to set it up and it'll do it for you. After seeing all this, you can probably tell that the depth of this platform is crazy. I've got one last very small little hack that you can use. Whenever you've got a decently big prompt, just add in at the end, take a deep breath, and then generate your output. That's literally it. I don't know why, but studies show that that makes the output a good bit better. Especially whenever you're using a system prompt, this is super helpful then. One last time, take a deep breath, and then generate the output. Anyway, whenever you have everything tuned in this platform correctly, and you know how to use it, words can't even describe really how amazing it is. One thing I'll say is don't take ChatGPT for granted at all. It really is only as good as the questions you ask and the context that you give it. And the better you understand how to work with it, the better it will work for you. And to be completely honest, in the last year, I've probably had more conversations with ChatGPT than I have real people. That's because it's just so good at what it does, and I really do have a grasp on how to actually use it and how to get the benefits from it. And for me as a business owner, it's made my life way more efficient, way more effective, and it's completely changed how I operate on a day-to-day basis. So if you've stuck with me through this video, I know for a fact that you're going to be leaving a much sharper and much more advanced user of ChatGPT versus whenever you clicked on the video. And the only thing left now is to put it into action. Now, if you thought this video was valuable, I would seriously appreciate dropping a like and a subscribe if you want to see more videos in relation to AI and business. Now, that being said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.